So same as thing for BD6 really, I'll quickly just tell you about the exam. This is last year's obviously, and then we'll have a chance to ask questions about either the content of the course or the assignment or where I'm going on holiday next week. So the format this time is pretty much the same as last time. There's 2 questions, still the same. But anyway, you answer all of the questions. And probably the main things to point out, that's not doing anything right, is that they're split. So there's, if you can read that, it doesn't really matter. There's questions about HDFS and Hadoop. There's a little bit in that one about Hive. There'll be probably some other kind of slightly more peripheral question as well. But it's all about the theory. So I guess there's been a few components to the course. There's been the whole Java programming bit. And the main thing to say is that that's not included in the exam. So there won't be, don't worry if you don't spend time trying to get the kind of Java syntax remembered, or, you know. There might be some kind of slightly more theoretical, how does some aspects of Java, why are they important for Hadoop? But it won't be, you know, write some code to iterate through an array or some such thing. It's at a more conceptual level if it talks about the language at all. And so the things that are important are things like the roles of the different methods. So what's map for, what's reduce for, when would you use a combiner, what a setup and cleanup for, and so on. And probably something about what they receive as input and what they send out as output, and how those things kind of tie together. So that normal set of stuff that you would expect, and well, you probably can guess what kind of question I might ask if I do about HDFS. There's a fairly limited scope for asking questions about that. It has a structure, right, an architecture where name node and data nodes and so on, and so I expect, having put it into your assignments, you're probably all familiar with that. So this one, actually, there's an example. Last year it said, describe how the concepts of inheritance and interfaces are used with Java code as part of MapReduce. So that's the kind of level that, if it does ask about Java, that's the kind of level that it's, I can't remember if we asked something similar to that this time around or not. And then you'll see this bit of this question is rather long-winded, but basically it's saying you've got this job to process, and it describes how it's a set of files to run. And you probably immediately recognise that this bit was written by Dave, so it's obviously about the stuff he taught about Condor and so on. And it's just asking you to weigh up the pros and cons of different, would you run it on a Condor cluster, would you use a GPU? So I don't think he's spoken much about GPU. I think he's mentioned the possibility of using GPUs to do parallel stuff, but there won't be much detail if that's in it at all. But it's worth just at least understanding when would you use Condor, when would you use Hadoop, when might you actually find a GPU on a single machine more useful. Obviously there's times when the data quantity is smaller. So that's what that question's getting at. What are the pros and cons of the different parallel methods that you've been told about? And that's it really, same deal as always, the number of marks given in the square brackets. Try to help you decide how much to write and how many kind of separate points to make. And there won't be a need for a calculator in it, so you don't need to bring along a calculator. You can have a dictionary as usual if you need a foreign language dictionary. And have I set this recording? Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, so that's kind of usual thing for the exam. Do you want to ask any questions about what will be in the exam first, and then move on to more general things? Well, you'll read it through. I think you'll probably be reasonably happy with it when you see it. All right, so is there anything more generally about the assignment or what we looked at in the course, or some bits that you didn't understand? Let you have to think about it for a minute. Yeah.
Do we need to require Spark R in this
So the question was, it was the spark in the exam, and well, the definite reasons are because we didn't cover that. But no, actually, there isn't any spark in the exam as it happened. Yeah. Yeah, I think that. I don't know. It would have ended up being a programming type question. I don't like to put those in the exam. So. Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing about spark. Are you all done on the assignment now with the bits of it still to, or lots of it still to? You've got a few more days yet, haven't you, probably? So? For this one? It's today? Oh, is it? Ah, right. Yes, that probably is right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Just one thing about the submission, which I Thompson.
Yeah.
Started back and saying that there was one particular document was completely plagiarized, and that's because it was the actual assignment as well. It's part of the thing that's submitted in as a part.
Oh, right.
I picked it out and said this is completely copied.
Yeah.
It was the, so I don't want to worry about it.
No, no, about that. Yeah. Yeah, we know we don't blindly look at that number, and, you know,
Yeah.
Immediately.
It's
Do
very
it.
obvious that it's the assignment.
Yeah. No, it's all right. That, no, I mean that. There's no automatic process behind the numbers that Turnitin generates. It's just something I look at when I mark it, and normally you know anyway, because you know if there's a sudden paragraph where the use of language is very different, or it used to be the font would be would be different. So.
The BD6 one hasn't got a similarity checker.
Oh, isn't it? No, turn that
So
on.
I submitted it.
Right.
Then I submitted it into my BD7 similarity checker,
Oh, right. Yes.
which then found the BD6 submission, so it was 100%
Right.
the same. So then I resubmitted my BD7 because I didn't like that.
Right.
I was scared of that. But is that a problem, or how
No.
can I, if you've already submitted it, how can you check to see if it's got any similarities, if it keeps finding itself?
Oh, I see. Yes.
I'm just not getting the order right.
I don't know. I don't think I have the ability to go in and tell it to ignore a particular document. Yeah, I don't know. I suspect that's. Well, there must be ways. There must be
But I did
because.
it with BD8 and that seemed to
Yeah.
ignore itself.
Oh. Maybe it's because it's in a different. Perhaps if it's
Oh,
in
did
the
you think it was
same.
cross-module?
Yeah, that's probably. It treats it as a different submission. Yeah, because you can have several goes.
Yes, found that.
Yeah, but I mean you'll know.
But
If you-
it's interesting though, because you just want to get that down low as well. Because even though you know,
Yeah.
you might come up with a phrase that.
Oh, it's pretty unlikely. And little bits. I mean, you know, we only get excited about it if there's whole paragraphs of, you know,
100%.
cut and paste. Well, no. I mean, sometimes you can get 20-odd% just by adding little bits of coincidence here and there.
So will there be a similarity to from BD6?
Yes, I thought I turned it on. Sorry, I guess I haven't, but I can go and do that. Yeah. But that won't help you because you'll find the BD7 version.
But if it's within the same module, it might be okay.
Oh, I see. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Except you've submitted one in BD7, so won't you find that one? You've got one in both now.
But I only submitted it in the similarity check, so I think it's
Oh, I
the
see.
name then.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
possibly, yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I can imagine every sound in everyone.
Yeah. I mean, you'll know whether you've written it all yourself or not. It's a slightly weird thing. But it's designed, you know, more for people who don't quite understand what you're not allowed to do, so that there's some chance of them getting, you know, a warning before they actually submit. But yeah, I'll take something.
Just a general question about the project, because in the website was written that we covered R, we were supposed to cover R, and it's
Oh, is this
something-
BD6 now?
Yeah, and it's something that we haven't talked about, so I wonder
Yeah.
if it's something that was in the module and we didn't have time to cover, or something that just excluded for the module?
There was a lab, yeah, there's supposed to be a lab on R,
Okay.
and because we got behind with the labs, yeah, we never managed to get it back in again. I could release the sheet if you wanted to look at it. I know that's not a massive amount of help, but that's what happens. In previous years there's been a lab about R. Yeah, I mean that was rather minimal, to be honest, just one lab on it, but it's really just, if you've done Python, then the only question you need to ask really about R is what are the little differences in syntax, and that was basically what that lab was about. But yeah, I can stick it up on Canvas. Actually, it might be, no, I don't need it. I'll put it on. Yeah.
One thing that struck me was that, are you, I don't know if you intend to do it, but are you going to try to run all the bit jobs that you see as part of your assignments?
No.
Stupid question, probably.
No, it was, the first year I did this, I did that. And yeah, it's been a nightmare because you have to get them into your own space. And
Yeah, there's so many variations in the way that
yeah,
it's set up.
compile and so on. And with the numbers this year, there's no way. So, and actually I didn't bother last year either for a similar reason. So what I did last year, and I'll probably do again, is if the results are correct and the written report all makes perfect sense, then I take it that you know what you're talking about, and that really is how you got the results.
Just
And
the
so
red,
it's fine.
main runs.
Right, okay. There'll be a few where maybe the results, the list of words is different, or the description of what was done seems slightly different to me, and then maybe I'll run just one or two.
To check.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps it's happened in the past that there's been some trivial mistake that's meant that it didn't work. But I've seen that basically from the code, I've seen that they've got the right idea. And they just haven't, they've got this one thing that they haven't spotted. And so, rather than say, no, it didn't work, and so you don't get very many marks, I fish around in the code to try and see, you know. Basically, I look at the code if I want to try and find more marks for somebody. But if the impression is that it's all fine, then, yeah, I don't go looking for evidence that it didn't work. I'd like to submit it all the same, so I can see. I'll at least see that it exists, if nothing else.
Just say that the comments are worth 20 marks.
Oh, yes, actually, that's true. So I will at least look at the code, yes.
We put effort in
Yeah.
I just spotted that when I got to the marking scheme. I'd have gone down the marking scheme and gone, oh. It's like, look at all the code.
Is that in Webdev? Is there, if you've got the cost function and your learning rate for 18% and you kind of learn stuff, is there a nice graph you can get out to see what it's doing?
No, I wish there was. Yeah, particularly with the algorithms like the multi-layer perceptron that iterates many times through the data. It would be nice to see a error curve diminishing, wouldn't it? But
And you can't create one in any way.
well, not via the GUI. Well, not that I found. I don't know. The GUI grows every year, so it's possible they've added something into one of them. It's got several different interfaces as well. But generally speaking, when people want to do something like that, they use the API and write something themselves in Java. Because you can get all the source code, so you can go right in and change the very source code and pull out those errors each time round. But that's a bit outside the scope of what I expect you to do for the assignment. Yeah, it's a shame. There's a lot of software that does that. You can see the error dropping. And it does give you an insight.
When you're kind of trying to find the right values, how can you, how do you know what direction to go in then?
Well, let's say you set the number, let's say it's multi-leg perceptron for the sake of a concrete example, and you've set the number of epochs to say 500, then so the first question might be, is that enough or does it need more? So you run it for the 500, you get some final error value, and then you say, well, I don't know, I'll make that 2000 and run it again, and if it hasn't made any difference, well, either you need many more, or actually it's got as far as it was going to go. And maybe some of the other parameters would help you instead. So maybe you put it back to 500, given that you didn't gain anything with the longer training time. You set up some of the other ones. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll try and find some decent settings for all the other hyperparameters, and then at the end I'll do a much longer run just to see if there's a plateau in the cost function. Because sometimes it'll drop like that and then it'll go flat for a really long time as it wanders about in weight space, and then at some point it'll finally get to the edge of like a big plateau and then continue down again, and the error will start to drop. And whether you can see it flat like that or not doesn't help you much in guessing whether or not it's going to suddenly drop down again, other than just leaving it keep going for a long time.
The cost function is different for every set of parameters, or is it the same for the algorithm when you're trying to set the parameters by the best fit on a cost function?
Yes, so in Weka the cost function is fixed. It's not one of the hyperparameters.
Sometimes you'll see that and I'll say, oh no, it's the cost function for every different set of stuff we do. And I'm like, oh.
No, so the definition of the cost function would be something like squared error. So it's always measuring squared error. No matter what the other things you set. More generally, you might choose a different cost function, although I don't think Weka allows that. So there are some other ones like entropy-based measures that we haven't really talked about.
If you change the actual structure
Yeah.
of the thing that you do, that, I was wondering if that changed the cost function initially.
It doesn't. Well, it doesn't change the output of the cost function. So the cost function is a function, right? And the input to the function is the training data, and the output is the difference between the output from the model and the known output in the, let's say, training data, if that's what we're measuring it for. So inside the cost function, the way it works is it takes the training examples one at a time, puts them through the model.
But the structure of the model will change.
Yes, yes. So in that sense, the structure of the cost function changes with the structure of the model, because the model is part of the cost function. But generally speaking, when people talk about a cost function, they talk about the measure that it makes at the output. So in this case, the error would be the target output that we know in the file minus whatever the model said. So that would be, that difference. So there's no sense really in which you have to worry about the fact that the cost function changes just because the model changes. Because that happens every time, even every time you just change one of the weights in the network, right? That basically changes the model.
I was thinking that the different layers and units change the structure, and then all the learning rates and stuff are kind of like just tuned.
Yes. Yeah, and the cost function is a function of your model. Right. One way of thinking about it is that you give the cost function two things. You give it some data and you give it a model. And it rates that model. It tells you the cost of that particular model. And if you change the model, what you've done is you've changed the inputs to the cost function by changing the model. And so you now get the cost of a different model. But that model is evaluated with the same function. That is, adding up the differences or whatever you've chosen. See what I mean? I don't know how else to describe it. Well, you mentioned the cost function is just this black box. And you're trying to build a good model. And you come along with a model and you show it to the black box and you say, what do you think of this one? And it says 5. And then you change your model a bit. Maybe add some extra hidden units, or maybe just change the weights of your existing one. You bring it back, you show it to the cost function again, that same black box that hasn't changed, and you say, what about this model? And it says 4. And you go, ooh, that's improved. So the cost function hasn't changed, but your model has. So the cost function's job is just to report back to you how good that particular model is, based on the data that you're using to train it.
I was thinking that the cost function was black box kind of internally creates its own output, and then you measure the difference between that output and the one that you gave it, and then that creates. So if you change this, then you change its internal one, which should change the cost function.
Not really. It's the same function. The model is one of its inputs. It's like saying if I had a function x squared and I gave it x is 3, right, its output would be 9. If I now gave it 4 as its input, its output would be 16. It's still the same function. I've just changed the input. I gave it 3 in the first example and 4 in the second. So with the cost function, the function's the same, but in the one case I give it this model as an input, and in another case I give it that model as an input. And so it processes the model and gives you a measure. But the way it processes it is identical each time. Anything else, or are you all keen to get back to writing your reports? Yeah.
For the Leonardo setup, I used can we use a combination of methods for the hyperparameters? I mean, can we use, for example, manual search and random search?
Yes. Yeah.
And do we have to note every change that we make to the hyperparameter in the assignment, because I have made a lot of changes. So I have tested a lot of hyperparameters.
Right. So did you all hear the question? My apologies to anybody who's not doing BD sticks. But I might as well answer these as I'm standing here. So the question was about the hyperparameter search. So you said that you've mixed a random search with a manual search. I'm guessing perhaps you started with some random points and then used some common sense or some intuition to decide where to move them. So that's all fine. What I would like, let's say you tested 30 different models. It would be quite nice if there was a table where you had in one column the hyperparameter settings and in another column the results. Because if you run each model, it's just a case of noting down what the settings were and how
I
they
tried to do it with coefficient result method,
Mm.
but I got worse results
Right.
as the
Oh, okay. Just report what happened. What I'm largely interested in is that you took a sensible approach rather than how well the results that came out of that approach, how well you did. So if you did something sensible but all your efforts couldn't find a better model than the first one you started with, well, maybe you were just lucky with the first one. Still just report what happened. Rather than saying, oh, the first one I tried was the best and that's it. Because that doesn't give you much insight into what process you follow.
So So it's better to use the coefficient descent because it's more organized method.
That's a more complicated
Because
question.
I found better result when I was playing with the higher parameters randomly.
Right, yes.
So
yeah.
my
It's- It's possible. Yeah, yeah. Just report that. I mean, you know, these things.
So can I write that I use the coefficient descent and then I tried randomly
Yeah.
and
Yes.
I found something better.
Well, yeah.
So there are a lot of methods.
Yeah.
Okay, I will do this.
Right.
Is the assignment, would you say that's a typical approach to doing this kind of machine learning study? If you're going to do something in Google,
Yeah.
take a few models, a few different techniques, and do that sort of, what we do is then pick one and then do the testing on that, and then release that to your clients and
Yes.
deploy it. That's it, I think.
Yes, it was.
Typical
Yeah,
example.
it was designed to mimic my experience of doing this kind of thing in reality. Yeah. Oh, I don't know if any of you. I don't know why I got this email, but you know, Andrew. I don't know how you pronounce his surname. Yeah. I noticed that Datapest they're recording him Andrew MG. I'm sure that's not how we would pronounce his name. But he's writing a machine learning book which is about the kind of practice of it in the real world. And he's releasing a chapter at a time as he does it. And you can sign up to receive those chapters as they are written. I don't know, I got an email from him telling me about it. But I don't think I think it's a public thing, so if you were to search, then, or maybe I can distribute the link, I'm sure that would be alright. But anyway, I suspect that would be interesting, but I doubt that he'll release anything before the exam, so. Or that you'll have time to read it before the exam. But as you continue with your data science careers, I suspect it might be an interesting year. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll let you get back to writing up your assignments. So thanks very much for attending, and good luck with the exam.
Oh, your holiday.
Oh yes, thanks. I will. Well, I hope so.